How do you start a business in California? Well, watching this step-by-step guide to starting a business in California is a great place to start. Hi, this is Brian from MyOCBookkeeper. We are a business consulting firm that helps businesses of all sizes in everything from business planning, financial modeling, and strategic planning to day-to-day bookkeeping, accounting, and business formation. If you have any questions on matters of that type, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, so starting a business in California or anywhere is an exciting prospect. If you're not planning on starting a business in California, this video will be helpful to you regardless, as it will give you the basic steps, which will be largely applicable wherever you are. And also this is a brief guide. If you're looking for a more comprehensive guide to starting a business in California, check out our comprehensive guide to starting a business in California, or check out our blog at myocbookkeeper.com. Okay, so first of all, you're going to want to decide what kind of business you're going to set up. There are 7 basic types to consider. There is the sole proprietorship, the limited liability company, corporations, limited partnerships, general partnerships, and limited liability partnerships. As this is a brief guide, we're not going to go into too much depth on those topics here. That is. I would imagine a lot of the people watching are looking into sole proprietorships and limited liability companies, but certainly all the above are quite common. And if you want more information on those specific business types, please feel free to check out our more comprehensive guide or our website, or just do a Google search. There's a lot of great information out there. So once you have decided the kind of business you want, the next step is to find out if the name you want is available. In California, a great tool in that regard is the California Secretary of State website. You see the URL here on the screen. You can do a business search at businesssearch.sos.ca.gov. I also recommend you do a trademark search, and then just for the sake of redundant systems, it's always advisable to do a quick Google search. For more information on the topic, a good tool, as I mentioned, is the California Secretary of State website. In particular, if you check the URL listed there regarding business availability, business name availability, there's a lot of helpful information. As you see, obviously the name is supposed to be both unique and not misleading. Okay, number 3, get a federal employer ID. That is an FEIN or an EIN. It's the same thing. Now, the employer ID is used by the federal government when taxing businesses. In some cases, you're required to have one. In other cases, it's optional. Corporations, LLCs, and partnerships generally must have one. Sometimes sole proprietorships must as well. You can check out the IRS website for more information. See the URL on the screen. However, in general, a lot of people these days, even when they're not required to get one, just do so anyway. In some contexts, it might be indicative of professionalism. And in the modern era of identity theft, for the sake of privacy, you might want to do so as well. It kind of shields you from you having to potentially use a social security number or other private information in certain contexts. What's nice about this is, in spite of the fact, it's sort of operational, paperwork, red tape, etc., it's really quite easy. If you just Google IRS EIN, you can do it in no time. There's a few rules in terms of how many you can sign up for in a certain period of time. But other than that, it's a quick and easy process. Okay, next, you're going to want to apply for the relevant permits and registrations. Now, this will be contingent upon what you're doing and where you are. If you are selling whiskey and shotguns, you're probably going to need a few more permits than if you're selling, I don't know, children's books, for example. Now, a great tool in this regard is the Cal Gold website, which can provide some helpful information. And also, you're definitely going to want to check out your county and your city government websites. which can be surprisingly helpful, quite helpful really, in this process. So don't hesitate to do that. In particular, if you're selling the aforementioned whiskey and shotguns together. Now, the step 5 is setting up applicable bank and credit card accounts. One of the reasons to do this is simply to keep personal and business finances separate. Having experience in accounting, we have seen countless situations where people have muddied their personal and business finances, which have created problems in terms of taxes. It's created high accounting bills in terms of separating the two. It has made it more difficult to make predictions for the business in the future in terms of financial models. It makes it harder to create a viable financial statements to understand what you're doing well, what you're doing poorly. So it is strongly advisable to do everything you can to split those two up clearly. As I say here, good for organization, tracking business activities, etc. It also can be useful in terms of establishing a credit history. Now, in some cases, it's required. It is not required for all sole proprietorships. So in those contexts, you can avoid it. However, it's strongly advisable, particularly if you expect to be creating revenues quickly for the purposes mentioned above. Now, the requirements to do so will vary, but oftentimes, if you're going to head to the bank and you want to decrease the probability of a return trip, bring your EIN if you have one. If you're using a fictitious business name or a DBA, bring that. Bring your business license. And as noted here, clearly that the requirements may vary based on what you're doing in the bank, etc. The U.S. Small Business Administration website can be helpful with information on this topic. And just FYI, a fictitious business name or DBA is what you can do if you want to change the name of a company. So for example, if you have John's Boutique LLC and you want it to be John and Mary because John and Mary got married, you can have John's Boutique LLC, DBA John and Mary's Boutique, and that will be your new name. I digress. All right, step 6, just satisfy the ongoing requirements. Now, even if your business is not really currently active, you want to be very careful to do this lest you accrue penalties and late fees and things of that nature. So for example, if you do set up a DBA in California, it has to be renewed every 5 years. If you're a corporation or LLC in California, you have to pay at least $800 in franchise tax annually. Very important to remember. LLCs in California have to file statements of information every 2 years, and corporations in California have to file statements of information every 2 years. So if it's important to remember all of these things to do. I can't tell you how many people have set up a business, kind of put it on the side for a while, forget about this, and then have some serious headaches to deal with. Here we just have some useful websites. Part of starting a business is just learning, as you're doing here, and these websites in particular can provide good information. In particular, the California Secretary of State, the California Franchise Tax Board, and the California Business Portal can be very helpful. And that is it, my friends. You are off and running and ready to go. As I said, this is Brian from MyOCBookkeeper. We are at www.myocbookkeeper.com. We help businesses all over California and the United States. So whatever your question is, large or small, like I said, we do everything from complex financial modeling to day-to-day accounting. So whatever you may need, give us a call. Good luck on your business. All right. So best of luck. We'll see you next time.